6th, and we're in the apartment of Robert E. Arnold, who was born March the 18th, 1918, so he's like 85 years old now. We're in Westmoreland, Kansas. I'm Dean Schoengert, the coordinator for the Veterans Oral History Project in this county. Robert, what were you doing before you went into the service?
What did I do? I was a carpenter.
You were a carpenter after you were out of high school and working as a carpenter.
I went to work for Massman out of Kansas City after I got out of high school.
What caused you to enter the service?
Well, I got drafted. Yeah, I went to Leavenworth. There was I and two other carpenters that was helped at Leavenworth, and we were building wainscoting in the old barracks, 4 foot high all around the old barracks. And the major there that kind of took a liking to us, he was going to try to get us stationed there permanently. But he went to 7th Corps headquarters, and they said no, we had to go somewhere and take basic training. Of course, they mentioned Fort Riley, and I said, no, I've seen all of Fort Riley I want to see. So I went to Camp Callan, California. That's out north of San Diego. And I was there about 16 months in Camp Callan. I transferred to another outfit, and they were out in the Mojave Desert. And that was quite an experience in the Mojave Desert. Every voice out there looked the same. I'd get lost every time I turned around. And after we left the Mojave, they sent us by freight from California to New York by freight train. And we all started out in suntans, and they weren't suntan when we got there to New York, that's for sure. We got there about the 3rd of July, I think it was now. I know it was awful hot that time of the year. And we were bivouacked about a mile from the place where we were loading the ship. And they had to have everybody in the same uniform. And they couldn't anybody get all their stuff in their duffel bag. So they made them wear field pack and overcoats, 4th of July, and walk down there to the harbor to load on a ship. Well, we boarded a damn English ship, and it was one of the biggest convoys that ever crossed the ocean. We were 13 days going across to England. And we was only in England about 2 weeks. We got our equipment, and then we went on to France. And I got off of the English people pretty quick there. When we were loading aboard ship, I seen a lot of carcasses of beef go on the ship. And on the way over to England, we ate boiled fish and the black rot potatoes. And those Englishmen would come out at night and let us stand guard, and they'd offer to sell us a steak sandwich for $5. So I got off of the English real damn quick.
You said a big convoy, how?
Yeah, they just kept picking up ships. I don't remember how many they had, but they'd have to stop about every so often and put on a depth charge. I don't know whether they sighted any submarines or anything, but they probably was lurking around there.
You said 13 days?
13 days.
What kind of equipment did you pick up there in England?
Oh, we picked up our half-tracks.
Tell us about the half-track.
They had the machine guns and everything mounted on them.
What else on them? These are anti-aircraft?
It was anti-aircraft, yeah. It was mounted on half-tracks. We had lots of chances to use them, but they wouldn't let us fire the damn guns because we'd give our position away, because it was always attached to the infantry or something up close, Those old krauts would fly by in their Falkluffs and roll up and look at it and smile. They knew you weren't going to fire at them. But they, about 10 minutes later, you'd get the damnest barrage of artillery you ever seen. I don't know what kept us alive that long.
You just had a machine gun on those for shooting at airplanes, that's all?
That's all.
How many
Yeah.
men per half-track?
We dug in our half-track, camouflaged them best we could, you know. And at them German air pilots, they knew where we were at. I think if the Germans would have had more airplanes and fuel, we'd have got a lot of bombarding and strafing, but they didn't have they had out in the Autobahn, when we got to Germany in the Autobahn, they had all kind of planes back in the trees, but no fuel for them. If they'd had fuel, I know they'd have raised some hell. It was rough enough as it was.
So you kept moving along with the infantry as you...
Well, we'd be attached to tanks or something that was in convoy all the time. Artillery
see.
moved up, we was in convoy with the artillery. When we first went in there, we was with a small artillery outfit. We was only about 700 yards from the front lines. And it was pretty rough for a while. But we were lucky, didn't lose any casualties.
You really didn't fire much at airplanes, but you were always there if needed.
Always there. I had some good little machine gunners too. And the little half-track 16s had a power-driven turret and a Mark 9 sight in it. And I mean, about every fourth round was a tracer. One short burst, and it'd tell you exactly where that plane was. Oh, I know, we shot one down over a river crossing, but that's the only one. They had the pontoon bridge in across, first time I crossed the German River. Pontoon bridge in for everything to cross on. And if you went up on reconnaissance, you had to walk up. I walked a lot of reconnaissance, checking out our next spot to go.
Just picking out the next spot to put the...
Half-tracks in position, yeah. Yeah, they were crossing with tanks, infantry. From every branch of the army was in it. The Germans were dug in the bank across the river, and all they had was smaller caliber machine guns. And the infantry went in, and they had some those guns that fired phosphorus shells. Boy, they sure burned out them Germans. They had Germans parts of bodies all over the place.
Was that the recoilless rifle
The
that you could
bazooka,
carry?
the
Not bazooka-like?
fired them phosphorus grenades. They were good. They discarded their machine guns and a lot of their smaller arms, and they went with that. But they did it with the phosphorus grenades. They really wiped them out.
Did you carry your ammunition in the half-track?
Yeah, they had the 50 caliber machine gun was in the half-track boxes of shells. Yeah, and extra barrels, because if you fired too long, you burn up a barrel. 50 air cooled. Yeah, they kept us pretty well supplied with ammunition and gasoline.
You got gasoline along with all the other tanks and vehicles.
Yeah, they delivered it to part of the army. I don't know what part it was.
50-gallon drums?
Uh,
50-gallon drums you get the gasoline in?
yeah, well, no, it would come in gas cans,
Those 5-gallon cans?
5-gallon cans. I think our headquarters outfit picked it up. I don't know where they'd get it, but they'd haul it to us in the field.
Were you How did you sleep and eat while you were moving like that?
Well, we had mostly K rations. They'd give us B rations once in a while, but they were so hard to keep out in the field. They'd spoil on you, and like some of the meats packed in cans, you opened them, they didn't last very long, they'd spoil. So the K rations was the handiest there was. C rations and K rations. And we made the bows too.
Did you?
Yeah, I was up there when the 3rd Armored got all shot up. They claimed them Germans were using bazookas to knock out the half-tracks, or the tracks on the tanks, and then as the members of the crew crawled out of the tank, they'd pick them off with a high-powered rifle. It was a wicked go. All those Krauts was dressed in army uniforms, so you didn't know who was who. A mess.
What do you mean? Didn't know who was who?
Well, they dressed in American uniforms.
Oh.
The Krauts did, the Germans did, and you didn't know them from an American. You had to be pretty careful. We broke down the half-track one time, and a distributor went out on the half-track, a quarter track, and we had to sit out there in no man's land for about 3 days till they got there with a distributor for the half-track. Yeah, we went through that, and then we went back into southern Germany and the Bavarian Alps. I enjoyed the Bavarian Alps when I was over there. Beautiful country. And we got sent down to where Hitler's eagle's nest was, Berchtesgaden, to take over the city government because they'd had 2 of the outfits that jumps out of airplanes, 100 and, yeah. Well, the guys parachute out of airplanes.
Paratroopers.
Paratroopers. They had 2 paratrooper outfits down there, and they got to arguing who had made the most jumps and got to fighting, and they moved them out there and put us in the government for the city. And I didn't stay there too long because I had points to get out, and they sent me to Starnberg to the 25th Armored. 25th Armored had been over there 3 years to North Africa, Italy, and the whole shebang. And of course, those guys that were been in the regular army so long, they didn't like the duty, so they made me the acting first sergeant. I had to follow them out twice a day and count noses and one thing and another. And so we came home in a nice transport. First time it had made the trip across the ocean, all air conditioned and real nice. We got into the Mediterranean and then into the ocean, and we run into a hell of a storm before we got to Florida. And they run us all down the hole and closed the top in. And going into, I think it was, can't remember that port where we landed, but they couldn't go into the port head first. They had to go into with the side of the ship to the into the embankment. And they like to drove that captain of that ship crazy because they all got to that side to see what was going on, and they tilted the ship. I mean, it was really tilted. Well, there's probably 15 or 20,000 men on the ship. And he was just screaming bloody murder. They were spread out on deck. Camp Patrick Henry, New Jersey. I think it's New Jersey. I don't remember anymore. Yeah, we was there a few days, and they talked the soldiers into taking their dogs out of the duffel bags and whatnot. I never seen so many dogs in my life. When we got on board ship, we didn't see a dog. when we landed at Cap Patrick Henry, they began to take the dogs out of the duffel bag and everything. You never seen so damn many dogs. They got by with it too. All they said, you guys take your vets to the veterinarian, have them given shots and taken care of, then take them home with you. So them guys all had a dog to take home. I had picked up a little old rat terrier over in France, and he was gun shy. He'd ride in a Jeep with me till we got some artillery started coming in, and then he got under the seat of the Jeep and you couldn't get him out from under there. Felt sorry for the little guy. Finally lost him.
How did they keep the dogs hid on ship?
Yeah, they had him down in their locker there near quarters somewhere. There wasn't too many officers aboard the ship, and they were all on the top deck, nurses and the captain, or officers. And we had a detail one time to clean the top, the first and second deck on the ship for the nurses and the officers. And they gave me a detail of the men out of that 25th Armored, and they'd been overseas so long they wasn't about to serve anything. And so I couldn't find them. And about 3 or 4 days later, aboard ship, they had a fight. They put a bunch of guys in the ring, blindfolded them, and if they were right-handed, they had to put their left hand behind them and use their right hand. And they'd back into each other, and one guy had hit. 2 guys had hit one guy at the same time. It was terrible. And aboard ship, then this officer that had put me on that detail realized who I was, and he threatened to court-martial me. And I said, well, it ain't gonna take long. Let's go ahead and get it over with. And he never did do any more about it. But I couldn't find the guys for the detail, and I wasn't going up there and cleaning the decks myself for them officers and nurses. Yeah, you learn a lot.
What was the most scary time when you're in your half track or quarter track? Was it the Battle of the Bulge, or
Was it what?
the most scary experience?
Oh,
What would you say?
yeah, I know, you had so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
I expect that river crossing was probably one of the worst, because they had so many outfits there, tanks and everything else. It made you kind of scary. But I was a platoon sergeant, and that was part of my job. We never had a second lieutenant, second officer in command. I had to do his work and mine too. Colonel Graves, our battalion commander, called I and a couple other sergeants in one time and put us through the mill. They wanted to make officers out of us, second lieutenants. And I come out of that meeting after they had the meeting on it, and Graves said to me, he said, well, you didn't want that promotion very much, did you, Arnold? I said, no, I've seen all the second lieutenants I ever want to see. You had to be honest with him.
Did you have a personal weapon with you all this time?
I had a M15 rifle.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, something I could carry easy. Because I was in and out of Jeep and in and out of half tracks, and carried a little old 15 on my shoulder most of the time.
Did you have to dig a foxhole every night, or?
We had foxholes put in every time we moved in position somewhere. We had foxholes. Anyways, in one place in Germany, or Belgium I think it was, a German come out of a farm building there, and he handed our field officer a pistol and a hand grenade. He's wanting to give up. And the captain said, well, now, Arnold, you find a place for you and your men to sleep. He said, that old barn full of hay looks good to me. And I said, yeah, that'd be all right. Come to find out, there was 4 Germans up there in that mound of hay, and they all had rifles loaded to the hilt and the safety off. It was just, but they made them jump out of the barn. They had foot rots so bad they couldn't walk or anything, and they made them jump out of the barn because they busted their feet open, and they had to take them to medics. But you run into a lot of stuff, I'll tell you. I would like to go back over to that country someday and take a trip through there. There's some pretty country over there, especially that the mountains and all in the southern part of Germany. Their streams got trout in them, just like you see pictures of trout in the streams here in the United States. They'd be in schools of trout. And my company commander, battery commander, somebody had given him a handmade German fly rod and a bunch of flies, and he hadn't used it. And I said, well, let me go try that fly rod and them flies out. I went down to one of these streams along the Bavarian Alps there and baited up with the fly, and I was having a little trouble with the fly and the weeds and stuff behind me. So I took off my combat boots and going to wade out a little ways, and I stepped off and went clear over my head. The water was deep and cold. Well, I hadn't taken anything to string the fish on or anything else, and I caught several trout. And I pulled up an ammunition box, German ammunition box out off of the bottom, and put some rocks under it to hold it up, and I put my fish in there after I caught them. And I caught some nice trout that day. Of course, that was about the tail end of the war. But great country over there.
You ever have a USO show come by or anything like that?
A what?
USO show?
I don't think we ever saw any in France or Germany.
Was the Red Cross? You see any Red Cross?
I've seen the Red Cross quite a lot. We saw them in England most of the time. We was there only 2 weeks. Yeah, the Red Cross usually out there with coffee and donuts. We picked up a Jeep off of the beach over there in France that had been left behind from the V-Day. And we put a fictitious number on it, and we had that Jeep all during the war with an odd number on it. When the war was over, then they made them turn in a lot of vehicles, you know. And so they caught us right off the bat with a phony number, but they let it use it all during the war. And it's a good thing because they only had one Jeep in the outfit. And that was Lieutenant Mahan's Jeep. He
So what was your outfit, you said, Lieutenant Mahan? So
he was
how many men and how many half-tracks or?
well, they had 4 gun sections, and each section had 2 squads. And there was about 6 men in the squad, so there was about 12 men in the section. And Lieutenant Mahan was the commander of the platoon. He's kind of an oddball. We got ready to go overseas. He come and got on a train with me, and he said, well, he said, I didn't have much trouble telling my wife goodbye, but he said, that little moon-eyed bulldog, I'm going to miss it. Now be damned, we got over to France, almost into Germany maybe, I think, but he had some plastic handles put on his pistol, and he had a picture of that dog under one of them glasses on his pistol. He's something else.
So he was your commanding officer from when you left the States?
Yeah.
All through?
Yeah, he went all through. He and there was another one, Lieutenant Oganowski. Well, in a battalion they had about, I don't know how many lieutenants in the command of half-tracks outfit. And I can't for the hell of them remember them. Ours was the 468th battalion, but I can't remember what the other one's number was. It was the same typical outfit. We rode the 40 and 8, or whatever you call them, 40 train from Germany down to France, Marseille. And the first day on the track, they pulled by a German train. And then as they got over into France, they changed to French trains. And in the start of it, they had a bale of hay or two in all these cars. And everybody laid down in the bale of hay. Nobody placed for everybody to sleep. They finally got the wise the second day, and they spread the hay out in the train, and everybody could lay down on the floor, you know. But everybody was trading off selling all their clothes and equipment and everything else on that train going down to France. And I, like a dummy, carried my duffel bag to Leavenworth, and I wouldn't have needed to even brought it home. But I did salvage my uniforms.
Did you have to turn in your gun, your M15 or your rifle? You had to turn that in after you got back to the States or before?
Yeah, I carried it till I got to the States.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, they carry their firearms.
So, from New York, where did you go to get out?
From New York.
Took a train back to Kansas, or how did?
We came back to Cap Patrick Henry. I don't remember what state it's in one of the eastern states, far eastern states. And then we were sent by rail to Leavenworth, and we discharged at Leavenworth.
What did you do after the war?
Well, I went back into construction. Worked at it all my life. I had 50 years in the unions. I worked quite a lot for Olson out of Omaha. I had a friend that was a superintendent for Olson, and he always kept me employed somewhere.
Mostly carpentry?
Yeah.
Were you married any of this time?
Anyway, married. Yeah, I married a gal from Kansas, from Westmoreland. And I've lost her and my stepson with diabetes. And I've suffered something awful from that. It's just a lonesome world. Don't know what to do with myself anymore.
Was you married after you came back from the service or before?
Yeah, after I come back.
Uh-huh.
We went to Colorado in the 50s sometime, and I got married before we went to Denver. We lived in Denver 25 years, and I worked out a union there in Denver for a number of years. And I also worked out of the Phoenix, Arizona union. Went down into Arizona to work. For the last 4 years I worked at the trade because I couldn't take the cold weather anymore up in Colorado. You have to put on 4-buckle overshoes and gloves and everything every morning to go to work, and it just didn't hitch with me. And I told the wife I was going to work any longer, I was gonna have to go to Arizona or someplace where I could stand the weather. So we went to Phoenix to start with, and then moved down to Tucson. Bought a nice home in Tucson. And then my wife's mother, she was diabetic, and she had trouble with the diabetes, and lost a leg, and we were gonna try to take care of her, and we, like an idiot, sold her home instead of putting it on lease or some rent or something. Had a nice 4-bedroom home, that 4 baths and all. It was fixed for retirement, and give it up to a guy in the Air Force. Of course, we were lucky to sell it at the time. The guy had the money, and he had to go on the limb for part of it too. He'd have to send me a payment of so much every month to make up for the difference in the price. And he did for a number of years. He paid his share of it. So we had a nice home.